Hello everyone, it's Marion from Wool Thread Paint here. Today's video tutorial is all about the humble granny square. In this case, a simple 7 round 1 colour granny square which is part of the cloud cover blanket pattern. As you can see, there are a lot of granny squares. Some of them are in multiple colours and some of them are plain. I do have another video on my channel which shows you how to make the squares in multiple colours. So today I'm concentrating on the single colour, and with a beginner in mind, I'm going to try and take you through it as slowly and carefully as possible so that by the end you can also make a square that is straight and neat and all set to go into your cloud cover
I'm using
blanket.
Stylecraft Special for this tutorial in silver. The reason I've picked this colour is because in my cloud cover blanket, which is a fairly monochrome design with shades of grey, there is a silver. It's not Stylecraft Special, it's a different yarn, but this is just an odd piece that I have, so I thought I would use this for the tutorial. And the hook I'm using is 4mm, which is a size G. And this is, I think I mentioned, this is DK, or if you're in the US, light worsted weight yarn. Now, first of all, you want to start by putting a slip knot onto your hook. And again, there are lots of ways of making a slip knot, and probably everybody has their own method. This is my method. So I just take my yarn and bend it like that, so it makes a loop. And then the long end, the end that's attached to the ball of wool, I just put it behind that loop and grab it with my hook and pull it through. And that's my slip knot, and it is also on my hook, ready to go. And you can pull it up to a reasonable, not too tight, to a reasonable firm tension on your hook. Now you're ready to start. And what we're going to do first is some chain stitches. And a chain stitch is very simply just loop your yarn over your hook and pull it through that loop that's already on the hook. I'll do that again. Watch my hook, because the beauty of a crochet hook is that you can turn it. It's got that little barbed end that holds onto the yarn, and you can turn your hook to the angle that is best for pulling through, and you will find that it comes naturally as you're working. So I'm going to just put my hook under that yarn and pull it through. Oh, the other thing I was going to say, if you're a complete beginner, is that you want to put a little bit of tension onto this long end so that it doesn't flop all over the place. If it flops all over the place, then your tension is more difficult to achieve. And I've used an old knitting method of tensioning my yarn. And what I do is I just hook it around my pinky finger and then turn my hand over and put my index finger underneath the yarn, and that just holds it in a firm position. So I'm ready to start chaining, and I'm going to chain 4 stitches. So put the yarn under put the hook under the yarn, and you can see I'm bending round and just grabbing it under the actual hook part, and I'm just going to pull it right through the loop that's on my hook, and that's chain number 1. Then I'm going to do that again. Bend it round and pull. 2, bend it round and pull. 3, bend it round and pull. 4. So I've now got a tail. I've got my short tail from where I started, and I've now got a kind of sausage shape of 4 chain stitches. Now the next step that we want to do is to turn these 4 chain stitches, which are in a long row, into a circle. And to do that, we're going to take the hook and find the very first chain that we made, put the hook into that chain and do the same thing again. Put the yarn over the hook, and this time we're going to pull it through that very first chain and also the loop that's on the hook. And now what we have is a joined up line which has been joined up into a circle. And there is a hole in the middle of the circle, and we're going to be putting our stitches into, we're going to be working our stitches into that hole. Now, it looks kind of like, if I put this as close as I can to the camera, it looks kind of like there are actually two holes. But this one here is not the one that you're going to be working into. You want to pull it apart a little bit and find the very center hole, just where my nail is popping through. And that's where we're going to be working. Now, once you've done the first couple of stitches into that, the hole becomes much bigger and much easier to see. So first of all, what we're going to do, still with the chain stitches, is chain 1, 2. Now, what we're doing here is we're taking our yarn up to the height of the stitches we're going to be making. That sounds a bit complicated, and again, it becomes clearer as you're working. So we've now got our yarn a little bit away from that circle, and we've got 2 stitches that we want to put into the circle next. And the stitch that we're going to do is called the treble crochet stitch. In US terms, that's double crochet, but I'll be talking you through in UK terms, so this is the treble crochet stitch. To make the treble crochet stitch, we want to put the yarn over your hook to start with. So that's called yarn over. So it's sitting on the hook. You can put your finger on it just to hold it, and then find that center hole and put your hook into the center hole. And then grab the yarn and pull it through. And what you have now are 3 loops on your hook. So the next thing to do is to put the yarn over the hook again and pull it through the first 2 loops, leaving 2 loops on the hook. And then put your yarn over the hook again, and this time pull it through the last 2 loops so that you're left with just 1 loop on your hook. And that is a treble crochet stitch. The first 2 chains that you made are to replace the first treble crochet stitch. We're actually going to be making clusters of 3 treble crochet stitches at a time. So this first chain 2 will count as a treble crochet stitch. And like I said, it was only to take your yarn up to the height of the stitch. So we've now got, let's say, 2 stitches on the going into the circle, and we've got 1 more to make. So yarn over, put your hook into the center, pull up your yarn again so that you've got 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2 of these loops, and then yarn over and pull through the other 2. And now you can see we've got 3 stitches in total, and that is the first side of the first round of our granny square. So next thing we have to do is to put in something that's going to become the corner, and this is where we're going to chain 2, and that will turn the square into a nice, well, it'll turn it into a nice square because that will form the corner. So we've now got 3 more treble stitches to put into the circle, and as I said, you can see quite clearly now the circle has opened up. So it's yarn over, put your hook into the circle, pull up your yarn, 3 loops, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. and we have to do that twice more. I'll go just a little bit faster and then I'll slow down again. I want to show you what this looks like as a first round. So now you can see we have got 3 stitches, 2 chains, 3 stitches. It's time to chain 2 again and on to our next batch of 3 stitches. For treble crochet, you always yarn over first. Put your hook into the circle and pull up your loop. Yarn over again, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. And yarn over again for the next stitch. And again, watch my crochet hook as it spins a little as I'm working, and that holds your yarn on the hook. So I've now done 3 sides of my first round. So I'm going to chain 2 once more and then put my last cluster of 3 treble stitches. That's got to get pulled back because it fell off my hook. There's the first one. Second and the third. Now, before we finish off this round, we've still got to make the very last corner. So it's chain 2, and now we've done 4 sides and we've got 4 corners. So what we have to do now is close off this first round so that we can get ready to start round 2. And what you want to do is to slip what's called slip stitch into a stitch in order to close off your first round. And the patterns, and including my pattern, will tell you to slip stitch into the top of the first chain 2. And all you do is put your hook in, put your yarn over your hook, pull it through and pull it through the loop on the hook. Now, sometimes, especially if your tension is a little on the tight side, that first chain 2 will look very tight and small and look as if it's going to be quite a job to put your hook into. Now, actually, in my case, this is not. It's quite easy to see, but sometimes it is quite difficult to see that chain 2. There isn't really any, it's not strictly speaking the way to do it, but there isn't really any problem in actually putting your hook into the very first treble stitch, and that's the top of the first treble stitch, and make sure that you go through the 2 loops that are at the top and pull it through and through. I don't think the difference is worth bothering about. If you can put it through the top of the first chain 2, do so. If not, put it through the top of the first treble stitch. And that's round 1. It doesn't look much like a square at this point. It's kind of like a wheel, but these corners where the chain 2 stitches appear will become squarer as we go on. So we're ready to start round 2, and first of all what you want to do is to chain 2. Now this is before we turn it or do anything. We just finished off, we've slip stitched into the last stitch or the first stitch on the first round, and now chain 2. At this point, once you've chained 2, I suggest you turn it over. So you're actually working on the back for this round. And have a look at where your chain 2 has landed. I'll see if I'll just use my pencil here. What's actually happened is this chain 2, like before, is going to be the very first stitch of the first cluster of 3 stitches, and it has landed on the extreme right of this corner. Now we're not going to be working into the center anymore. We're going to be working into the spaces that have been created by these chain 2s. So this is called a corner space, and this chain 2 falls at the extreme right of this corner space. So what you want to do then is count that as the first treble, and we're going to yarn over, put the hook into that space, yarn over and pull up the loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Nope, that doesn't want to come. Pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now we've got 2 stitches, yarn over, make another one, and that's 3. That's our cluster. Every part of this granny square is worked in clusters of 3 trebles. So we've done our first 3, but that is only half of that corner. So what we want to do is to make it into a proper right angle, and this is where we chain 2, starting to make the next corner, and then yarn over, put your hook back into that same corner space and make 1, 2, 3 trebles. And there you can see this is becoming more of a squared off corner. The next thing we want to do, yarn over again and find the next corner space and pop your hook in there, and we're going to make 1, yarn over, 2, yarn over, 3 trebles. So as before, it's time to chain 2 to form the corner, and then finish off the corner with 1, 2, 3 trebles. And there you can see we've done half of round 2. So we just need to go into the next corner space. I'll speed up a little bit. You can always go back to the beginning of the video if you need to be reminded how to make the treble crochet stitch. And 3, so we've got 3, it's each corner has got 3 treble stitches, 2 chains and 3 more treble stitches in it. Now this is the last corner, so it's 1, 2, 3, chain 2, and 1, 2, 3. And there we can see how the square is beginning to really look like a square. And of course we have to close up this round 2, and like before I say in the pattern to look for the top of the first chain 2 and put your hook in there, but you know it can be a little tricky. I mean, I've got it there, but you can also, if it's easier, work into the top of the first treble and make your slip stitch where you pull the yarn through both loops. Right, round 3, 1, 2 for the first stitch, then turn it over, and we're back onto the same side where we started. And this time have a look, and you can see that there are, as well as the 4 corner spaces, there are 4 spaces, or there's 1 space in each side between the corners. And it just so happens that by turning the square over, our first chain 2 is actually nearer to this middle space. So that's where we're going to start. First chain 2 counts as the first treble. So it's yarn over, put your hook into that middle space, pull up the loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And we'll do that once more. Now this isn't a corner space, so we're not going to put 2 lots of 3 clusters in. It's just 3 stitches in that middle space. And then it's yarn over and into the next corner. And this is where we're going to put 3 trebles, chain 2, and 3 trebles. And there you can see the first corner being made. Oh, I'm right off camera there, sorry. The first corner being made of round 3. So I'm going to work round with round 3. So we have a middle space in the row where we're going to put 3 trebles. And then the next corner, 3 trebles. Chain 2 and 3 trebles. So you can go on forever making a granny square. You can just keep adding to the rounds each time, and it will just get bigger and bigger from the center. And the beauty of, I'll finish this and then I'll show you, but the beauty of turning it after every round is that it keeps it from skewing out of shape. It's the tension, it's the fact that the tension is being balanced on one side and then the other. If it's all done on the one side, there's a tendency to turn, to make the corners a little bit squint, so it doesn't look so much like a square and more like a parallelogram. But by turning it each time, that prevents that from happening. It also means that your blanket is going to lie nice and flat as well. Now all I have to do now is 3 more trebles and then my final corner. So it's 1, 2, 3 in that center space, and then 3 in the corner, 1, 2, 3, chain 2, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I'll slow it down a little bit for you. Right, and that's round 3. And of course, as usual, just slip stitch into the top of the first chain 2 or the first treble in order to close off the corner. Chain 2 again and turn. And this time you'll see that there are 1, 2 spaces. So your square is growing by 1 space each time, or 1 cluster each time you go round. So we've now got 1, 2, 3 clusters on each side of the square. When you count your clusters in a row, you count 1 of those corner spaces, 2, 3, and then this corner space will be part of this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep working on this, because what we've done now is just repeated for as many rows as you need. And I'll pop back when I've done my square to the size I want it to be and let you see what it looks like. So remember, it's 3 treble stitches, chain 2 and 3 treble stitches in each corner, and just 3 treble stitches in the spaces along the side. There you go. So I'll be back in a minute and I'll let you see. I'm going to make 7 rounds because my cloud cover blanket runs to 7 rounds for each square. So I'll make 7 rounds in total and I'll be back to show you what it looks like. And now I've completed my 7 rounds for this square. It's quite a large square, but I'm just going to finish it off as I normally do. I've done 2 treble stitches in this last space, and then I just need to jump over and slip stitch into the beginning, and I can now cut the yarn, or I can if I have my scissors. Yes, here they are. I can now cut the yarn because that's me finished. And when you've cut your yarn, leave a tail that's long enough to sew in at the back when you're about to finish off the tails. And what we need to do is just wrap that round your hook and pull it through that very last loop and pull it tight. And there is your granny square. And if you were going to be attaching it in a blanket, I would turn it over again once more so that you've got the wrong side on the last round, and that will be the side that you do your join if you're doing join as you go. There's just one last thing to do, and that is to sort out these tails. And the nice thing about working in a single colour is that you just have the two tails to worry about. So I would take the first tail is the one that you made right at the beginning in round 1, and you've got a needle with a blunt end and a nice big eye. This is a size 18 tapestry needle, but it's good for taking this weight of yarn. And what we're going to do to finish this off, and it has to be done nice and securely so it won't pop out over time, and that the way I do it is I run my needle around the circumference of the stitches around the center circle. So I'm just going to push my needle in between. It's not going right through to the back, it's in between the stitches. And if at any point you pierce the yarn, that's all to the good, because that all helps to stop it from popping out. So I'm not pulling tight at this point because I'm going to leave that until I get right back to where I started, which is about here. And at this point, I'm going to give it a really good tug because I want that center hole to be closed up. And there it is. It's as tight as you could get it. Now, obviously, if I was to just cut my yarn at this point and leave it, it would eventually spring back out. So what you want to do is work back around in the opposite direction. And this time I like to pick up a little bit of I like to go behind where my yarn has come out, pick up what's called a back stitch. Take it maybe not quite so long going round, just pick up a stitch. You see what I'm doing? And that just again helps to keep it from popping out. You can work as many times round as you like, really. It's the more the merrier. But I've done that about 2.5 times, and you can see that that's quite firmly worked in. And then you want to just cut this, and these actually are not my good scissors. So you want to have as sharp a scissors as possible for doing this. But you want to cut your yarn as close to the crochet as possible without cutting the crochet, because that would be a disaster. So you can pull the yarn up a little and cut it, and then it just disappears into the crochet. So that's your center. And then when it comes to doing the outside one, again, you just thread it onto the needle. This time it doesn't need to be pulled tightly. In fact, you want to keep it at the same tension as the rest of the crochet stitches, and feed it through some crochet stitches. Again, not going right through to the back. And you can see that I've just kept my tension as loose, or when I say loose, as even as my actual crocheting. I'm going to split a couple of these crochet stitches when I'm working back the way. Again, that just makes it less likely that the yarn will work its way out. And I'm going to make it work through in a third direction like that. And that's it woven in. And again, I'm going to pull it up a little like that and cut it. And then it will just sink back into the crochet. And that is your granny square. It's reversible now because it's been worked on each side, and as you can see, it's nice and straight. So if you're making a whole bunch of those for a blanket and you've made them all as straight as that, there'll be no need to block or stretch it into shape when you've made the whole blanket. So as I said, this particular one is for the cloud cover blanket, but this could be used in any crochet blanket. And I do have another video on my YouTube channel which explains how to make a granny square with a colour change after each round. And then when it comes to joining these squares, I have video tutorials on how to do the continuous join as you go, and I will be doing one for the simple join as you go as well. And that will explain the whole process for you, and you'll be able to make your own blankets. So I hope this has been of use, and that you enjoy making some granny squares and turn them into blankets. I'll see you when I make my next video, and for the moment, happy crocheting and bye for now.